Starting to happen.
I want corporations out of the government, and I want people back in.
I want peace rather than militarization.
I want the top wealthiest Americans to be taxed higher and that money to go to education.
I want economic justice.
I want a greater regulation of the banks and the markets.
I want my kids to have a job and health care.
I want true democracy for the 99% of us who don't have it anymore.
I want to see.
We are the 99%. 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 Mic check, mic check, mic check, mic check, mic check, mic check.
Hey everybody, and welcome to the Occupy Wall Street show. We've got a fantastic surprise for you today. Our guest is political commentator Sally Kohn. Welcome, Sally.
Pleasure to be with you.
So nice to meet you. You know, I want to start at the beginning because I first discovered you on Twitter, of all things, because I'm really big into Twitter. And I think it was one of your tweets that caught my eye, where you said, oh my gosh, I can't believe my eyes. My pro-Occupy Wall Street article was on the front page of FoxNews.com.
Yes.
So that caught my eye. I was like, whoa, a pro-Occupy Wall Street? First of all, that there was a pro-Occupy Wall Street article on Fox News, and that was pretty cool. So then I read it, and I was like, wow, very impressed.
Yeah, I'm a woman of many mysteries.
Yes.
Yeah, no, I actually am a regular columnist for Fox News, among other outlets, and so I've written, and you know, as a columnist, get to write whatever I think. And so enjoyed writing a piece recently supporting Occupy Wall Street and trying to explain to folks the reason for Occupy Wall Street, why it was doing what it's doing, and actually the main point of the piece was to make the argument that at this point, this was early on when I wrote it, it doesn't matter what they're for, it just matters that they're against something, and that's bringing people together. And I think it went on to get 30,000 Facebook likes, over 500,000 hits, and growing. So
that's a lot of likes.
you know, well, it was a nice surprise for everyone, and I think it shows the resonance of the message, both on all sides of the aisle.
Yeah, and since then I've seen you're on CNN and Fox News, and where else? Maybe
around,
all over. So,
on the subway, on the internet,
not until now, only on TV. But you haven't always been a political commentator. So what did you do before that, and how did all this happen?
So Bruce, for 15 years or so, I was a community organizer, more of a behind-the-scenes person, helping grassroots organizations and grassroots leaders find their voice, do what they wanted to do better, run their campaigns better, do their media work better, and then knit them together to do more powerful work at the national level.
Cool.
And it was very, very, very deeply rewarding work, and I'm still connected to that work and do some of that. But then I made a shift, sort of really frustrated with the times we were in. This is sort of post-Obama's election, frustrated that on paper we won, right?
Yeah.
But in practice, the governing, guiding principles of the country were still largely determined by the right wing.
Yeah.
And, continuing to sort of push our various political boulders up a hill, when that hill was fundamentally shaped by the right, the extremist far right, and has been for 30 years, felt like this sort of impossible Sisyphusian task. So instead, I thought, well, what would it look like if I sort of played a different role and tried to change that public conversation to, in effect, do what organizers do, in small groups and church halls and union halls, and do it instead through the media.
Your media, for sure, yeah. Do you know who Lisa Fithian is?
I do, yeah.
She was actually our guest 2 episodes ago. Our friend Daniel interviewed her, and it was fantastic. You have to check that out.
Yeah.
She's amazing.
We've only actually met once, but I know she does amazing work and is a real resource and gem to the movement. So I look forward to that, yeah.
For sure. So what have... let's see. There it's been reported that unions and Soros and Move On and Acorn all have been behind organizing Occupy Wall Street. Who's really behind organizing Occupy Wall Street?
Yeah, it's really funny, Bruce. The defenders of the 1% and the enemies of the middle class, really, are throwing everything in the kitchen sink at the 99% movement because it is, in fact, so popular. And not just, among the traditional liberal left, but independents, the sort of Ross Perot, Ron Paul types, a lot of Tea Party members, a lot of conservatives. Last poll I saw, a third of conservatives endorse the Occupy movement itself specifically, and a much larger percentage agree with a lot of their critiques about the system we're in.
Right.
So, when you have something that is so popular and represents such a fundamental threat to the status quo, to our ways of doing things, to the inequality that has been shoved down our throats for generations, you gotta try, you're seeing everybody scramble to make this movement look, they're a bunch of fringe lefty radicals, they're unemployed kids, they're being paid to be there by Acorn. I mean, come on. It's actually just, apart from being pathetic, it would be laughable if it wasn't so pathetic.
Yeah.
It's really just a sign of how successful the movement is.
Right. Like that, wasn't a quote, was it Gandhi who said, first they laugh at you, then they fight you, then you win?
Yes. Yeah.
That's just so apropos, because you can see first they were just laughing and now they're getting serious and fighting and countering it.
Yeah.
And it's gonna be very interesting. But don't you think, though, that the average person can, to me, it seems so obvious, but is it just me? Don't you think that the average person can see them just throwing everything, like you said, they're throwing everything at it, every random thing they can think of, just hoping something will stick?
Well, look at McCarthyism. This is what we've done in the history of not me, not you, but we have done in the history of the United States when we want to distract from a quote-unquote dangerous political movement. Dangerous not because of its ideas or ideology, but dangerous because of its approximation to actual success and victory. So, there's no question. There's a group of people in America who are freaked out if they think, oh my gosh, these are Marxists or socialists or whatever other kind of ists have you. But the reality is sort of twofold, right? So the reality is, some of them are. Some of them are Marxists and socialists. That's okay. First of all, there was a poll recently that almost a quarter of Americans, this was in 2009, almost a quarter of Americans think capitalism doesn't work anymore in our country and would prefer an alternative like socialism, would present it with the question that way.
Wow.
It's almost 1 in 5. Now, I think that says less about people's support for socialism than it does with people's frustration with capitalism as we currently know it.
As we currently know it,
something like, I want to say 7 in 10, it was around there, 7 in 10 Americans said capitalism in its current form isn't working in our country. So let's be clear, some of them are. But most of them aren't. And the point is, if the critique is valid, who cares? Who cares if it's Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer who's come down from the sky, started talking, and made some really valid points about what's wrong with our economic system, how Wall Street is ruining our country and running our politics and shutting out ordinary Americans. The critiques, the aberrations, the random acts of violence, all of these things don't belie the fundamentally right and just and resonant message of Occupy Wall Street.
Exactly. And of course, the media loves hysteria and violence and things. Like you see Occupy Oakland, right? Where I've seen video on YouTube. You have to go to YouTube to get your news. It's so sad. But where they had 20 or 30,000 people marching, and all these families and little children and seniors and everybody, just so diverse, and it was like a festive parade. Really, it was just so masses of people. and people power marching all day for hours, right? But the only thing that makes the evening news is somebody started a fire.
Yeah.
And apparently, later I read the story was that because the police were throwing tear gas, somebody lit a fire in a dumpster to burn off some of the fumes from the tear gas. But they apparently, the police in Oakland waited until there were no media around.
Yeah.
It was late at night, no media, the coast is clear,
Well, the police
attack.
in Oakland are very savvy. Look, first of all, two things. No one should be condoning the violence that's happened.
Right.
There has been violence. You don't want to sugarcoat it. You don't want to paper it over.
That's right.
There have been assaults in the Occupy camps. There's been violence done to businesses and banks. This is true.
Yeah.
It hasn't been frequent. It hasn't been the norm. There have been a few aberrant activities that have been widely condemned by the rest of the protesters. But we don't want to sugarcoat it.
Right.
At the same time, I think it's very instructive to look a little more closely at what's happening in Oakland, because Oakland has a deep and very justified, I would note, the Oakland community has a very deep and justified, longstanding tense relationship with the police, to put it very lightly, right?
Yeah.
The Oakland police are notorious for racial profiling, for abuse of force, for, just heinous, for beating someone to death because he didn't show his ID. These are really long-standing issues with the Oakland police that the Occupy movement has sort of mapped on top of.
Right.
It doesn't get rid of those underlying tensions. And so the fact that the scene in Oakland exploded more than other sites, I think has more to do with that very justifiable and understandable history than it does the particularities of the Occupy movement.
That's kind of strange. I don't know that much about the Oakland area, but it seems to me it's like if the people are so supportive and open-minded, apparently, and liberal and supporting Occupy Wall Street and all that, like isn't there any democracy there, at all? Is it a police state? Does the mayor have any? Do the people have any power or responsibility for their own police force? Can't they eject them and replace them, do something?
Yeah, Bruce, that's a more complicated conversation. I'm not going to pretend to be an expert on Oakland. I think, generally around the country, in small towns and big towns, your relationship to the police force, in general, your relationship to power and authority, but particularly your relationship to the police force, is often determined more by your class and your race than it is by the particularities of that police force, whether it's accountable or not. So, in New York, right, I'm white, I live in a nice neighborhood. If something goes wrong, I call the police. The police are on my side.
Yeah.
I perceive them to be on my side. My life experience tells me that they're on my side. When I pass a police officer, our interaction confirms they're on my side.
Right.
But if I'm a young, black man and something happens, am I going to call the police? Well, I've been, stopped and frisked for no good reason. I've been walking down the street and looked at by a police officer like, are you suspicious? Are you doing anything wrong? I've experienced in my life the police more as an oppressive force than a liberating or saving or helping force. So in Oakland, I think that's very, very much the history mapped on top of, patterns of political unrest, and a police force that, frankly, has never been effectively reined in by the political system.
Right.
In a way that maybe now we'll start to see. But it's worth noting, incidentally, that it was only after a white Marine vet. I don't want to get the wrong branch. You get in trouble for that. Marine vet was injured by the Oakland police that it became a national story, whereas the many, 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 many people of color who have been injured or killed by the Oakland police have not generated that sort of attention. So it has really to do with that discrepancy.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Well, on that note, let's take a break real quick and thank our sponsors, because obviously, without our sponsors, we wouldn't be here. So first, we want to thank Mt. Gox. We were talking about Bitcoin earlier before we started, and Bitcoin is the money of the future. We call it I say it's the most interesting, exciting technology invention since the internet itself. Bitcoin is the electronic digital cash, in effect, currency that is completely distributed peer-to-peer, based on open source software. It's not distributed by any bank or any government or entity, corporation, website, group of guys, nothing like that. It's just literally peer-to-peer software. Mt. Gox, though, is a company. Mt. Gox is the #1 Bitcoin exchange, the online exchange. There are dozens of online exchanges, but Mt. Gox has like at least 90% market share. They're reliable, long-standing. They've been around. They've been hacked. They've been through all kinds of problems, but they've come out
on top.
On top, right. Nobody lost any Bitcoin, so they're in it for the long haul, and they're profitable, so they're not going away.
Now, do they pay for their sponsorship in dollars or Bitcoins?
Bitcoin, actually.
Okay, that's interesting. Just
But
curious.
That's the thing. It's convertible. That's what Mt. Gox does. Mt. Gox site lets you sell Bitcoins for dollars and buy Bitcoins with dollars, and 16 other currencies, by the way. Yeah, they're headquartered in Japan, and we have another show called the Bitcoin Show. It's a whole other show, literally. But Mt. Gox is a fantastic operation and makes it so convenient so that you can buy and sell Bitcoin from the comfort of your own home online without having to go anywhere.
Very cool.
Very cool, yeah. And now they have mobile app, which for Android, and they're working on one for iPhone, so really slick. So check it out, mtgox.com. We thank Mt. Gox for sponsoring the Occupy Wall Street show and the Thank You Economy book. It's thankyoueconomybook.com. Thank You Economy book is by New York Times bestselling author Gary Vaynerchuk. And this book is about social media. It's how do I explain it? It's about taking your business, whether it's a small startup or a very large business. It's a scalable method to bringing your business back to the old days when you gave, like your grandparents' days, when businesses gave you personalized customer service.
Yeah.
And so it's leveraging the new technologies of social media in the right way. Because like, speaking of 99% of businesses do it wrong. They get on Twitter and they Facebook and they spam you and they're annoying and it's not done right. But if you do it right, you can actually build, not just make a sale, but you can make a customer relationship for life and really make, have success that is sustainable. So it's all about using social media and leveraging that technology to really satisfy your customers. So it's called the Thank You Economy. thankyoueconomybook.com. So thanks for supporting the Occupy Wall Street show. And so click here to continue to part 2 of this show. There was a pro-Occupy Wall Street article on Fox News, and that was pretty cool. So then I read it, and I was like, wow, very impressed.
Yeah, I'm a woman of many mysteries.
Yes.
Yeah, no, I actually am a regular columnist for Fox News, among other outlets, and so I've written, and as a columnist, get to write whatever I think. And so enjoyed writing a piece recently supporting Occupy Wall Street and trying to explain to folks the reason for Occupy Wall Street, why it was doing what it
True democracy, for the 99% of us who don't have it anymore.
I want to see.
We are the 99%. 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 We are the 99%.
Hey everybody, and welcome to the Occupy Wall Street show. We've got a fantastic surprise for you today. Our guest is political commentator Sally Kohn. Welcome, Sally.
Pleasure to be with you.
So nice to meet you. I want to start at the beginning because I first discovered you on Twitter, of all things, because I'm really big into Twitter. And I think it was one of your tweets that caught my eye, where you said, oh my gosh, I can't believe my eyes. My pro-Occupy Wall Street article was on the front page of foxnews.com.
Yes.
So that caught my eye. I was like, whoa, a pro-Occupy Wall Street? First of all, that they're
Starting to happen.
I want corporations out of the government, and I want people back in.
I want peace rather than militarization.
I want the top wealthiest Americans to be taxed higher and that money to go to education.
I want economic justice.
I want a greater regulation of the banks and the markets.
I want my kids to have a job and health care.
I want